Hello, welcome once again to everybody that's always tuned into the Suidlanders Media YouTube channel and all the other places that you guys follow us on. This is another episode of the Suidlanders chat with me, Marius Greyling, and Simon Roche, that is in Russia. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't been following the channel, please go back or watch some of the content. It is really good, especially the last week and a half's one, where Simon is much closer to the front lines than he was previously in Moscow. Simon, how is it going with you?
Yeah, it's going well, thanks. Begin with a few complaints because my attitude is, I once, to give you some idea, I once had a very great experience in which a very, very highly qualified lady gave me some advice over a period of time. I'd visit her every week, this great professional. And after 2 years of seeing her, she said to me, I've realized one thing about you. You're obsessed by the truth. And she wasn't saying that I was a good person. On the contrary, that she was just saying you have this like fascination with, you wish you knew what was the real story, that if you do want to do work for the truth, if you do give up a little bit of opportunities in the big city as I did to work for a cause.
Yeah.
If you make sacrifices for something that is good or true or godly or whatever, then you have to be objective. You really have to take the rough with the smooth. And so I've been a bit irked by some things that have happened in the past week and a half or so in Russia. And if you don't mind, I'd like to get them off my chest,
Yeah.
Marius.
Yeah.
As you know, we did complaints videos previously as a tongue-in-cheek, facetious joke, because there's very little to complain about in Russia. The people are fantastic. The public transport is better than anywhere else. There's a very, very senior German guy here, very senior guy, and how the Germans are with time and punctuality and public transport and that sort of thing. And he said whenever they go to Moscow, his wife just keeps on saying to him, I cannot believe how much better the public transport is in Moscow than in Germany. So we were making jokes, but this is a little bit more serious. About a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, I went to get some medication from a pharmacist in Tushino, where I was staying. It's a suburb of Moscow, Yuzhny Tushino. And the pharmacist overcharged me by a very, very, very much. She charged me for one item 4 times what I'd paid for it about a month previously. And I think she just thought that I was incapable of, because I can't speak Russian, therefore I also can't count. Something. I think it was just a moment of stupidity on her part, that she thought that she could get away with it because this guy can't express himself and he doesn't know what I'm saying. Therefore, he's probably oblivious to everything around him, including, but it was such an obvious thing. I was really unhappy about it because she, older woman, ever so helpful, big smile, this, that, the next thing, while she was cheating me of my money. And there's no question about it. The item is a very particular item. You can get it all over the world. I've bought it on a number of occasions. I take basically 4 supplements most days of my life. It's, just herbal and minerals and vitamins, that nothing terribly serious. And I'm very conscious of what those are in Russia. So I was cheated by her. And then lo and behold, when I was staying at the Hotel Dominic in Donetsk, I went to the nearest pharmacist, apteka, and I asked her for 4 items that were displayed in a very particular display: glass on the service counter with a gap in between for her to serve. So you are this far away from the product when you're looking at it. And my mental arithmetic is not. So I totted up how much I was going to have to pay for those 4 items. And it was about 1,500 rubles, a little bit less actually. And she charged me 3,999, 990. So I said to her, okay, well, the most expensive item, I thought perhaps I misunderstood. I don't want to go and sit in front of the product display. Maybe the price that I saw was for 30 capsules, and the bottle that she has charged me for is going to sell to me has 90 in it, or it's 500 milligram versus 250. It can be a little bit wrong. And I said, okay, leave that one. Because I knew that if any one of the items was going to be more expensive and there was going to be a misunderstanding on my part, it was that item. The other 3 items, you really can't, the price simply can't differ by much. And she said, okay, then it's 3,100. And for those 3 remaining items, maybe 1,500, but probably less. So 2 pharmacists in a row, one did cheat me out of money, another attempted to cheat me out of 3 times as much money, or not 3 times, but anyway, a lot more money. And then yesterday I was invited to meet some people, and a presentation, and some of the facts in the presentation were erroneous, and they were errors that you had to know that you were making them. Errors, they were deliberate fallacies. And they weren't going to change the world, not least because I am more adept on that subject than the person who was educating me. So I get in. They say to me, right, we're going to begin with a presentation, PowerPoint, give you some facts and figures and data and statistics, but they chose a subject well-versed. So I was never going to fall for the nonsense, but they weren't to know that. So they tried to propagandize me with some bull dust. And afterwards, I said to my de facto host, you guys must be careful about slipping into the temptations of falling into that Western habit. Don't think that because the West gets away with lying the way that it does pertaining to Russia, that you're going to get away with the same. It's not how it works. They will point 1,000 fingers at you. You see, we told you so. Ruski lies, Russia bad. And they will succeed because they own the overwhelming majority of the media of the world. And they will milk it for all that it's worth. And you will also harm other people in the process. If I'd accepted that presentation at face value, if I was not adept in the subject, and I'd said, oh, golly, gee, you've really taught me something now, and I did an interview with you or with Ria Bo or with whoever, and regurgitated those false assertions, I could ruin my reputation, the reputation of Suidlanders. It's potentially extremely harmful to not do it. And my host, to his credit, took the warning very seriously. The person who did that was very much responsible for it. So an individual, that's just a fact. Because they made the mistake. They and their peers made the mistake of bragging about how he had done all of this work. He had done all of the research, and he was presenting facts that you can't find anywhere because they don't exist anywhere, because they're very high profile subjects. Therefore, there's no possibility of a false version, Anybody who's familiar with the subject of international finance knows that what the claims that he was making are false. And yeah, that led to just a very sour afternoon. And I ended up getting home again as a consequence of this young fellow who's obviously determined to take shortcuts to get to, or to be in his boss's good graces. But I don't want it disproportionately, but I wanted to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
A country of such, I mean, it's Marius, you've got this place. It is incredible. The people are wonderful. The food is terrific. The prices are great. The development, everything is worth a holiday in Russia. It's marvelous. There are 100,000 more good things than there are bad things, but in the spirit of, I'd like to believe that I do tell lies, but hopefully I also do appreciate the truth enough to be even-handed and not to be some automaton, like some robot, programmed Russian fanboy who just ignores everything, who reports about Ukrainian cruelty and Ukrainian strikes on children. But then he hears about a Russian strike that kills, well, I haven't heard of one, but, kills an old granny, and he conveniently ignores it. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. Yeah, Simon, in the build-up to this show, when we chatted off air, you've said you've got a couple of notes, especially on what Trump is doing with providing, I think, military weapons and things to Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yeah, Marius, it's a bit of a clown. I know that this is a sensitive subject for conservatives around the world. Donald Trump is idolized, especially for his anti-LGBTQ thing, although the first president in the history of the USA to appoint a man married to another man to his cabinet. But of course, he is very anti-LGBTQ, I'm sure. But the truth has to be told. This is a clown show. Donald Trump sent out letters to countries when I say recent days, it's really recent hours. We're recording this in the mid-afternoon Greenwich Mean Time on Tuesday, the 8th of July. So it's about 3 or 4 o'clock your time, 4 or 5 o'clock my time. And we all woke up this morning to reports of these letters that had gone out. So presumably on Monday evening American time, in which Donald Trump addressed various leaders around the world by name in letters, roughly 1.5-page letters, saying, "Dear sir, it's fantastic to deal with you. You're a wonderful country, you're a great country, but the trade is a little bit uneven because of the trade deficits, meaning that you sell us more than we sell you." That's what a trade deficit is. It's as simple as that. Because of the trade deficits that exist between our two countries, or the trade deficit that exists between our two countries, I am going to impose tariffs. I hereby inform you, I hereby announce, I hereby impose a tariff of X% on your country in trading with with the USA. So if we make a pair of shoes in South Africa and we sell them to the USA, when they get to, there are different ways of implementing this. So I needn't be precisely accurate. I don't know which manner of implementation they are going to adopt. But this is one way of doing it, and it illustrates the principle very, very easily. Anybody can understand it. I export shoes to the USA. They get to customs and they're held in a bonded warehouse. When the importer comes to pick up his shipping container full of shoes, he has to pay a 30% surcharge to customs and excise, to that arm of the US government. They collect all of that money and they send it to the treasury of the USA. So it's a form of revenue for the USA, a kind of a tax. Now, obviously, that hampers trade tremendously, because once the price of shoes from South Africa increases by 30%, immediately importers look for alternative suppliers. So South African citrus, oranges, lemons, may at this point in time be very, very competitive price-wise for export, or to look at it from the other side, for import. May be very appealing for store owners in the USA. If the price of South African tangerines increases by 30%, so I continue as the citrus farmer to charge R1,000,000 a ton or whatever it is. But when the citrus lands in the port in the USA, they have to pay another 30%. They may say, well, I can get the citrus for less money if I import it from Peru. So I'm going to shift suppliers. So these actions are going to cause enormous disruptions in world trade. And they're probably not going to have the effect that Donald Trump hopes it will, because there's a sort of an assumption that the same volume of trade will continue. In other words, we're paying out to South Africa, let's say $1 billion a year for trade. And South Africa is only buying $500 million a year of goods and services from us. So we're losing in this deal, in this relation, $500 million a year. We can correct that if we put on 100% tariff, obviously taking from 500 to $1 billion. So now we both on. But what will happen, and it's, as we've already discussed, I'm just trying to keep it simple. They're not talking about 100% tariff. I'm just trying to keep the arithmetic simple. They're talking about a 30% tariff. But we're going to correct. We feel that the amount of tariff will correct the balance. But you can never anticipate how much the trade will reduce once you put the tariff on. So if I'm charging you a certain amount, and you're charging me a certain amount, and my wife says to me, you know, Simon, that Marius is ripping us off every week. And that wife of his, cunning fox, I really think we should do something about it. And I say to you, Marius, I'm tariff of X because there's Y disparity, Y deficit. It doesn't take into account that you and your wife say, you know what, we won't buy from him at all. We'll buy from the next village. So there's a built assumption that all things will remain equal, which is never going to be the case. Anyway, he's imposing tariffs on the world, and we've discussed this before. You and I have, Marius. The senator, very senior Republican senator in the Senate, is proposing a bill for which he claims to have adequate support, whereby the USA will tariff Russia and China I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. China and India, 500% on their purchases of oil and gas from Russia. Again, it's a clown show. It's an absolute
Yeah.
clown show. Either these people are mentally retarded or they think we're mentally retarded. Because what they're saying is that every time that China buys, let's say, in a year, $100 billion of fuel from Russia, the USA will send China a bill saying, now you give us $500 billion in free money.
That's ridiculous.
It's that ridiculous. When I say it's a clown show, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the Chinese and the Indians are going to tell them to go and jump in a lake.
I've also seen
But
today, Simon, that he said all the BRICS countries and all the other countries that want to be affiliated with BRICS will get an extra 10% on those tariffs already implemented. So, I mean, how far is he going to go with this tariff things until it blows up in his face? Where, like you said, everybody's just going to go look for a other supplier that's not going to have tariffs on me or not on me. Somewhere, this is going to, it has to blow up in his face. There's no way, like you said, a normal consumer will do business with somebody and pay extra where you can maybe go to another consumer. That is just business 101.
Yeah. That's, as you say, that's the latest thing. So he tariffed us overnight, and he's talking about tariffing those who have anything to do with BRICS, which is now everybody.
Yeah.
Because if you consider the number of countries with which we trade, which Brazil and Russia and India and China trade, and Ethiopia and Egypt and United Arab Emirates and Iran, and I'm running a bit short on the names of the active BRICS full members. That's not to take into account associate members. That's not to take into account those who applied successfully to become part of BRICS and then didn't act on the approval or the permission. Argentina and Saudi Arabia being two prime examples where they applied and they were admitted to BRICS, and then they started to tread somewhat cautiously because of threats from the USA. But they're there or thereabouts. They're in the background somewhere. Everybody is connected to everybody now. So it's basically, we're going to charge the whole world.
Yeah.
Because there's no country in the world that is not connected to one of those, however you want to count it, the 5 founding members, or the expanded BRICS, or the double expanded BRICS, or the now triple expanded BRICS, or the triple expanded BRICS plus associate countries. You know, whether you're talking 5 or 9 or 15 or 30 or whatever number of BRICS that he's referring to, because he was non-specific. There is no that doesn't have a relationship with one of those BRICS countries. It's bizarre, but it's no less bizarre than his weapons to Ukraine story. So the other big conversation on the internet concerning Trump and the shenanigans house, besides the Epstein files, I mean, that's a disgrace what they did there, but we can discuss that another time. Trump has kind of maybe, possibly, could be, perhaps, halted weapons supplies to Ukraine. The long and the short of the story is that last week, a number of conversations were held, as they have been over a considerable period of time, of the 7 months or so that Donald Trump is 6.5 months that Donald Trump has been in office. It wasn't long after he stepped across the threshold of the White House for this term before he was by matters Ukraine and Russian. but last week things came to a head when Emmanuel Macron was on the line to Zelensky and to Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump rang Putin as well, and Donald Trump had a conversation with Zelensky, and Vladimir Putin put his foot down. He said, we will compromise on the fundamental principles or criteria for us pertaining to ceasefires, negotiations, and so on. One of which is you supplying weapons to Ukraine. And that was almost a great opportunity for Donald Trump to be exceedingly dishonest. He then passed the buck to the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who halted the supply of weapons and said that he'd done so unilaterally. It was me. Don't look at the president, it was me. It had nothing to do with the conversations with Vladimir Putin or preceding negotiations. It was just me. We're running low, guys. We're running low. I had to take a decision, and I'm Pete Hegseth. Look at my hair, and I'm the man in charge. Yeah, I take big decisions, man. You know, it's a pantomime. But the reality is that Yuri Ignat, I believe is the man's name. He's one of the Ukrainian senior military spokesmen, admitted very recently that the best Patriot systems, obviously they get upgraded over time. You know, you've got your 2016 model Ford truck and your 2017, and progress over time. Even the very best Patriot systems cannot cope with Russian missiles, which is not to say that they can't cope with all Russian missiles all of the time. The Patriots do have value, which is why Volodymyr Zelensky has been pleading for them, and many other weapons. They do have value, but they're not as great as they're made out to be. The point being that the USA is running very low on them. The Ukrainians are using them up because the Ukrainians are using them up, consuming them, because they have to fire so many Patriot missiles to strike one incoming Russian missile, and in all likelihood they miss anyway. For example, over the weekend, in one night, 539 Russian drones and 11 Russian missiles penetrated Ukrainian airspace and smashed Kyiv and Kharkov and Odessa and so on. And the previous night it was 400 and something, or 332 if I remember correctly, and the total over the 2 nights was 880 and some change. So Zelensky needs as many as he can get.
Yeah.
They will just eat them all up. The USA is running low, and Israel is always going to be the priority, I beg your pardon. Along comes Vladimir Putin, and he says, you're still supplying weapons. And the next thing, Pete Hegseth says, we're not supplying weapons, we're not supplying weapons. When in fact, the not supplying weapons is not about Vladimir Putin, it's about the fact that they have very few of the things left, and they're proving to be a failure. So why bother to throw them at Ukraine where they'll be wasted when Israel is going to need them at some point in time? And that's about the long and the short of it, Marius. It's an absolute, it's entertainment now. It's not statesmanship. It's not even governance. It's entertainment. End of story.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Simon. It's becoming more sillier and sillier as the weeks go past. And I'm afraid I think it's going to become even more sillier in the next couple of months as things progress more and more. Somebody else told me the other day that the what do you call it? Between Iran and Israel now, what do you the that they
The
don't
Yemen, Houthis.
no, that they don't bomb each other, the skietstilstand in Afrikaans. What is it in
Oh,
English?
the ceasefire in
The
English, ceasefire.
ceasefire, yeah, they said that you must just remember this is a pause. This is not a ceasefire. This is just a
Yeah,
pause. It's not a real ceasefire. It's just a pause in proceedings.
it's unbelievable.
And Netanyahu is, as we speak, is he in America? He's with Trump. They are discussing who knows what. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, interesting things going to happen in well, it has been happening and will
Yeah.
continue to happen. But Simon, thanks again once for the chat. Hopefully, we will be able to chat Thursday again with each other. And yeah, then
Mhm.
I can ask you what have you been up to and what has unfolded in the world of what's going on with this silliness and politics and World War III and.
Yeah. I look forward to it. And if there's a gap tomorrow, which I strongly doubt, I might just
Mm,
propose to you that we take advantage of the gap because
yeah.
I have very few here in Donetsk. I'm so busy. So we must make hay while the sun shines. But let's see how it turns out.
Fantastic, Simon. Cheers. God
All
bless.
right.
Okay.
God
Bye-bye.
bless, Marius. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheerio.